Yay, we're back.
Yay! Welcome back to the Scinary Information Nexus, our podcast of sin.
We've been gone a while.
Just a little bit, not too long.
About a year?
Well, we did a lot during that year, you know? There was a lot of moving around and...
Did we even look up when the last podcast was? It's been a while, because I don't know, we only put out like 7.
I want to say the last one we released was in November of 2023.
So,
It may have been
18
over a
months.
year, yeah.
18 months.
Yeah.
You think we still have anybody listening and following?
Actually, we do still get a little bit of traffic on our portal where we post.
Yeah.
So I mean, it pushes it out to all the major streaming services, and we get a little bit of traffic. Oddly enough, a lot of it from Brazil or Canada. So they love us in Brazil.
That is fantastic. Hola, guys, in Brazil. I thought, this has been on my mind for months. I've been wanting to get back here, and I think we're finally settled enough with everything that we've got going on that we can make this a regular thing. Now, how regular, I don't know. Maybe once every couple of weeks, maybe once a month, maybe once a week, maybe as needed. I just don't know what that looks like yet, but I wanted to get some kind of cadence going so that at least we can talk about the things that we do, the whatever's going on in the cybersecurity world. And it's sad that I had to bribe you with beer to do this.
Right? But you didn't bring a bottle opener.
You don't need a bottle opener. That's twist off, right?
It is not.
It is not twist off?
No, it is definitely not.
So tell everybody what you're drinking there.
Well, what I'm attempting to open is a super dry Asahi Japanese beer, and that is not opening. So I guess I will partake of the Voodoo Ranger IPA.
The New Belgium Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA with 9% alcohol by volume. That is a big can. That's what we in Texas we call that a tall boy.
And you know the best part about by volume is the more volume, the more you get by.
Yeah, but cheers, buddy. Glad to be back on the podcast, even though it's
Cheers.
just us two. Hey, that's not bad.
Yeah, I like Voodoo Ranger.
I've never had it. I just I was on the DoorDash app, and I was just looking for like cruising specs or whatever. I was like, I'm gonna get like the most offensive thing that I can find.
Honestly, I like Voodoo Ranger. It's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's.
I'm not a big
bad.
IPA guy, but I think it's got some nice flavor to it. Good hops. That's not like you said, offensive. So I like it.
Yeah, well, I was.
Oddly enough, the thing that I've never had is Japanese beer, and I guess that holds true today too.
I don't guess you'll ever have it. Because I don't. Do they not make removable caps for Japanese beer?
Well, most beers are not twist off.
Most of the beers I drink are twist off.
Is that mostly Shiner?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's some red ales in there.
Yeah.
But I was really hoping Mario would stick around for this podcast because I really wanted him to drink. Like, this weighs as much as he does.
I know. Yeah.
And then I wanted him to call his wife to come get him because I wanted to be a part of all of that. But this is a cybersecurity podcast, is it not?
Supposedly, by name at least.
Yeah. So I thought we would talk about like the new format. It's a new format. I thought we'd talk about what happened this week.
Well, I think even more so than this week, we should talk about what's happened this year, this past year. Because that's part of the reason why it's been so long since we've done a podcast. We've actually moved offices. I mean, expanded our offices and then moved everything over to the new office so that our tech services department that has grown even more has now occupied the old SOC office, and the SOC office has now grown to where we have individual pods.
So last time we did this, we didn't have a technology services division. at all. We didn't have. I was like the sales guy.
Last time we did the podcast, we had an old conference table moved out into the middle of the lobby with mounted, like basically boom mics that we were speaking into. And I did all the editing on a little mini PC in my spare time in between being an analyst.
So, yeah, it was, I mean, and since then you've become SOC manager. I think we're up to 30 analysts or something like that in total. So, growth has been good. Business has been good for sure. Good enough that you're right. We did just cut a hole in the wall between the two suites, and just took over what used to be a newspaper outlet here, and just took that over. Ran those guys out.
For those that have not been to our headquarters location, we are housed on the third floor of a building in downtown Waco, Texas, and that office space is rented out to multiple businesses. But since moving up here to this third floor, we have a sort of manifest destiny that is slowly taking hold.
Yeah.
We now own 4 of the 12 offices up here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, no, it's 4, but it's more like it's a little over a third of the square footage. Right. And I know that we've got. We do the things. We put the skunks in the ceiling and try to run people.
Play
out.
our loud music.
Yeah, play loud music. Just do nerd stuff, running droids up and down the hallway. So, but no, it's not for lack of trying to get the podcast up and running. We've just been really busy with other stuff,
which is good.
Yeah, it's a good thing, but it's something that I desperately missed and I desperately wanted to happen because we got some good marketing things going on. So I wanted to kind of pair this. With some marketing things, but I also wanted just to keep this light. I know when we tried to do it before that it was kind of scripted and we tried to make it a production and everything, but we don't have time to do that. I think what we have time to do when we can grab time is sit down and talk about things that are going on, things that we're seeing, issues out there in the industry, and try to kind of encapsulate that in a 30-40 minute discussion the best that we can. But it's going to be it's going to be difficult to do in that time frame. But I think we can do it. So the first thing I want to ask you about, which is just popped up yesterday, CrowdStrike laying off 500 folks. I mean, for an organization like CrowdStrike, that's not a whole lot of manpower that they're laying off.
It's still about, I think, 10% of their workforce.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that's a huge. That's a huge.
It's still significant.
Yeah.
You're right. It's not like laying off like half the workforce, or even someone like Palo, even though it's such a big name, doesn't have a very large employee footprint.
Right.
If they were to, I mean, honestly, they don't even have 500 employees to lay off.
Yeah.
So it really does depend on how you conduct business, and obviously CrowdStrike has been very heavy on the employee base. But from what I've heard, the people that they've gotten rid of were some of their best and brightest a little bit.
If you look at social media, that's what they're saying, right? I know that that was the thing that come across my feed in like Blue Sky and Threads and X was that. These were some really talented folks. Now, I don't know that, and you were wrong. Palo Alto has 16,000 employees.
Do they?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just their SOC.
Yeah, so their SOC is really small. Yeah, they do.
That makes sense.
I think with that article stated they have something like maybe worldwide 20 analysts and 32 developers or something along those lines. But the thing that gets me about and look, I'm not. CrowdStrike runs their business the way CrowdStrike runs their business, right? I'm not going to criticize them for that. If that's what they deemed that they needed to do, that's what they do. Aside from the fact they pay, I don't know how many $1 million a year to Formula One for the little CrowdStrike logo on all the cars, but that's
just because you want Formula One decal out there someday.
Oh, I would love to have a Formula One decal. Right now, it'd be about 1 millimeter in size and go on a front wheel somewhere.
No,
but,
underneath the foil.
Yeah, probably. But a larger conversation I have about that in cybersecurity, in the cybersecurity field, is that's years and years of experience out the door, right?
Well, and so this is something we've seen in other industries as well. A prime example, actually, that was brought up to me recently, and I don't know all the ins and outs of this, so pardon me if I misspeak a little bit. But supposedly the Duolingo.
Yeah.
They supposedly got rid of a large portion of their staff, especially the people that did the recordings of like all the different languages, because they were going to replace it with AI.
Right.
And I'm wondering if that isn't, at least to some degree, the direction that CrowdStrike is going. And we're seeing this across a number of different industries, of this idea that I can replace expertise with artificial intelligence and get someone who's fresh out of college, who has just a moderate amount of coding knowledge, get them to get almost to the end of the code, just correct the code using the AI, and then I don't have to pay them nearly as much.
So, I mean, eventually, I think that, and first of all, I want to dispel the notion of AI.
Yeah.
It's really not. I mean, it's not making decisions. There's no intelligence there. It is, it is large learning models, a bunch of algorithms. It's magic for sure, but it's not actual artificial intelligence that can make judgment calls, right?
Right.
On that stuff. And so my feeling is, if that's what tech companies are doing, especially in the cybersecurity field, I think that is a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've said this for years, that I don't care how smart the LLMs are or how good their algorithms are, that you cannot replace the gut feeling of an analyst that has been in the field for 2 to 3, 4 years.
Right. And even more so on the cybersecurity side, not even just in the cybersecurity industry, but in software development and in coding in general, as we're seeing the increase of this artificial intelligence. First of all, on the defensive side, I think that it's starting to potentially be an issue on the secure software development lifecycle, because we're now getting people in there who don't necessarily know everything that they need to know. And so they're correcting the code, but they're correcting the code for functionality again, and not for security, because they don't understand fully what's being coded.
So it's that analogy to that movie Idiocracy, where the smartest guy on the planet is a dumbass, right? Because they rely on automation. And that movie may be more prophetic than we could have ever dreamed, right? Where the knowledge, like the curiosity that drives us to figure out what's going on, like what's really happening.
Well, and I don't feel like that curiosity has died in humanity. I feel like it's not being properly rewarded anymore. And a lot of that's because of the quick cash business model of AI, honestly. There are appropriate ways of using AI in order to help complement your expertise.
It should enhance, right?
Exactly. It's a tool, and
right.
It should be used as a tool. The problem is we're going consistently more and more. And look, the attackers are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They don't need to have their code be 100% secure. They only need it to work.
Right.
And so it's fine if they're doing that, because they're going to find that hole, because AI can probably find the hole in its own code.
Right.
Given enough time and enough attempts. And that's what we've done, is we've exacerbated the wall in the chink scenario. We have to defend an entire wall.
Right.
And now we have an automated system building the wall, and we're not necessarily going around and viewing every single section of the wall in order to make sure it's full.
Well,
and then you have automated tools that are just going to pound the wall at an increased speed and find those chinks even faster.
Well, I think it's deeper. I think it's deeper than that. We run a 24/7 by 365 SOC. Right. We have analysts that they're looking at data, they're looking at the packets, they're drilling into the packets, and they're making a judgment call on what they're seeing, right? So our systems provide alerting and all that stuff, right? But the analysts still have to look at the alerts and figure out, okay, is this false positive? Is this an isolated thing? Is it more embedded in a section of the network, or is this something really, really big, right? I don't think AI is to that point. I really don't, and that's where I get like really flummoxed over when cybersecurity companies, tech companies at large say we've got AI doing everything.
Right.
It's like, man, I don't know. Like, I would much rather have an experienced person who looks at a one-time event, because how many one-time events have we seen that actually turned into a big deal?
Yeah.
Right? That one impact alert or that one PS exec that we see that throws that PowerShell command across the network. It happens one time. AI may alert on that, but unless you've got somebody there that goes, you know what, that doesn't look right.
Well, and the inverse of that is also true, which is we have seen a number of tools out there that employ AI that have an increased number of false positives because they're trying to flag on the same thing the analyst would flag on.
Yes.
But they're not fully understanding the underlying reasoning behind it, right? So they're flagging on elevated processes being used.
Yes.
And they don't look at who the vendor is and whether it's actually signed appropriately. And so, especially in like the education sphere, there's a lot of education tools that are not built the best. I mean, they work, they function, they do what they need to do.
Right.
But they're not built the best. And sure, there's some of them I'd rather them not use, but overall, unless it's being leveraged by a malicious entity, it's technically not an overwhelming issue. They have to be able to function and be able to do their job. It's that whole CIA triad, as it always is.
Right.
But I think that's what we're seeing more and more of as AI gets introduced, is we're going to start having major alert fatigue amongst end users.
Yeah.
More so than what we already experienced, which there's already a good deal of that.
And so the alert that we got from a third party SOC, right? We got an alert from a third party SOC that was forwarded to us from a client that said, hey, the third party SOC is alerted on this. This scares the crap out of me. Can you guys take a look at it? We looked at it. We knew right away. It's like, dude behind keyboard launched command, the task scheduler thing.
Right.
Right? Completely legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
But the SOC was in Dubai, literally in Dubai. So it took 8 hours for the alert to even show up in their inbox. By that time, if it was something bad, it would have been too late.
Right.
It would have been absolutely too late. But the problem is that when they sent that alert, there was no human looking at, okay, what was the actual process that was happening here, right? It was just, oh crap, it's an alert. Somebody launched Task Scheduler, so yeah, this could be bad. You need to look at this and send that to the end user.
Right.
The problem with that model is the alert fatigue. And I go back to, I think it was Home Depot or Target from like 2015, where they had a really good solution in FireEye that was throwing out alerts, but it was throwing out so many alerts that they were like, they just got immune to it. And they let one slip by, they didn't look at it. And that was it was an HVAC vendor coming in or whatever. And that was the thing that led to that big ass breach. And so I don't think that this industry, and I'm speaking cybersecurity, I don't think this industry is really ready for an all AI like solution, and it shouldn't be. And if you're a tech director out there, and there are companies out there that are saying, hey, we've got the latest and greatest in AI, that is fantastic. Who's validating the AI? Who's validating what decisions the AI is making? Is that scrutinized? How do we handle errors? How does all that stuff work, especially in cybersecurity? If AI is left to its own devices and it does, it alerts or it doesn't alert on something, that could be bad for the organization, right?
And that's probably the scarier part is, we talk about alert fatigue and all these false positives, but really if you don't have someone checking, you will never catch the false negative until it is too late.
That's exactly right.
And that is where the true danger lies. And that's, yes, analysts can also make mistakes. Honestly, we're human, we're prone to error.
Right.
But without having any kind of check on the AI model, you don't ever know whether that potential exists or whether it's happened, because the potential will always be there.
The one thing now, I'm Gen X, so I'm old school and can date myself, but I know that when I walk into your SOC with your analyst and I'm sitting there, just chewing the fat, just talking to them or whatever, the scariest thing I ever hear out of your SOC is one of your analysts going, "Huh, that's weird." That is the scariest thing for me. It was like, "Oh, okay, what do you mean? What's weird? Tell me." And we dive into it, right? Mm-hmm. But that is when you get an experienced analyst who knows their clients, who knows what the traffic should look like, and any deviation from that is something that's weird. That's where I think the human brain and the human gut takes over and says, yeah, I need to dig into this, because if in an LLM, if it doesn't meet certain parameters, that'll never make it past the initial, ingestion point or whatever.
And that's another thing we're starting to see a little bit of, is this claim that they can find like what's normal for your network.
Yes.
Without ever having you necessarily have to manage it or interact with it. And I just don't think that that's ever going to be fully possible. Will it be able to find some traffic that is at least common on your network? Sure. But if you've already been compromised and it's sitting there and you're not interacting with that and telling it that, hey, this is approved or not approved,
I'm gonna give you a term that I coined for that.
Okay.
That network has to be statistically flat in order for that model to work. That means that what happens on Monday happens every Monday.
Right.
What happens on Saturday happens every Saturday. And it can't be dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It can't be dynamic.
Which most networks are.
Yeah, there's no way a network can be static, right? There's no way that a network can be static. Just a patch to a switch will change the network behavior in some instances, right? A patch to the Fortinet or the Palo will change the way a network behaves, right? Patch Tuesday.
And that's one of the number one things our analysts spend probably the most time with is getting to know the client. We have a whole baselining period. We're actually revamping that right now to make it even more in-depth. So we have more knowledge of what's happening or what's supposed to be happening on the client's network. But even so, with that, if 6 months down the road they start implementing a new product, we're the first ones to say, hey, we saw this. This is new. Are you guys supposed to be using this? Or is this because it can be leveraged this way and this way and this, And so we're double checking with them, because that's part of being the managed part of the solution. Is we're making sure that these things are supposed to be there. Double checking with the client. Once we get that okay, then we're doing that whitelisting or whatever.
And that's another thing that always stuck in my craw, especially like before Scinary, when I was an information security officer. The thing that stuck in my craw about third party, SOCs or whatever was, how do I know you're doing what you should be doing, right? Well, trust me, if it's big, we'll let you know. And I never heard from those guys, right? Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to know, like, even if it's not big, let me know.
Well, and that's the other thing is what are they classifying as big? Because like adware is like dime a dozen. Yeah, it's out there like crazy.
Yeah.
But adware can be the gateway to serving you the malicious file that is the back door.
It's the marijuana of the ransomware world. Absolutely. You got those guys downloading weed, basically.
Yeah.
And Chrome extensions.
Oh, it'll be legalized soon. So
wait, so that's a new. I just had a business idea.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The weed Chrome extension.
What is it going to go off at 420 every day?
Just have Snoop Dogg on it or something. But yeah, so that, I mean, one of the things that I'm really proud of that Scinary does, and I know there are some clients that are like, oh, I wish these guys wouldn't, call me so much. But the reason that we do is because it is anomalous when we do call, and we absolutely want to make sure that that it's safe, right? Because again, what we're seeing in the wild from a ransomware perspective, at least in the industry that we serve, which is their number one risk, right? That's their number one threat, for sure. What do we see? We see compromised credentials. That's the number one vector. And so adware, grabbing credential stealers, info stealers, stealing that stuff.
And that's the other thing is now malware so often is bundled.
Yeah.
They may be using adware in order to make revenue,
right.
but then also using the info stealer on the back end in order to maybe do access brokerage or to be able to find more juicy clients for ransomware, right?
We won't name the client, but we did have a client where we found a crypto miner, and we called them. We're like, hey, you got a crypto miner on your network? He said, yeah, that's fine.
What do you mean it's fine?
No, it's good. No need to worry about that. We got that covered. It's isolated. It's on a VLAN by itself.
That's one of those ways of making money while you work, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Man, we wound up miles away from CrowdStrike on this.
Ah, well, that's what happens whenever you introduce Voodoo Ranger into the conversation.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel a little bit of that.
That's the IPA, sir.
Holy cow! I can't wait to listen to this. Maybe we should listen to this before we send it out.
Hey, as long as we aren't slurring by the end, I think we're fine.
All right. So the next thing I want to discuss. So the first thing was that cybersecurity losing years of experience to this perceived AI introduction, which is great, probably great for the bottom line. Man, I don't know. I guess the verdict will be written in years to come on how effective that's going to be. But the next thing that I want to discuss is the actual ransomware groups themselves. I want to especially talk about, I don't know if you've read up on this thing called Dragon Force.
Yeah. I knew you were going to, yeah.
So it's interesting what's going on there in the bowels of the deep webs.
It's a corporate monopolization tactic from everything I can tell.
And for those of you that don't know, if this podcast ever gets published, Dragon Force has apparently attacked Lockbit and decided to leak everything in the world.
Now, we'll say that's not confirmed.
Right.
There is some speculation that that's what's happening. But it seems like Dragon Force is wanting to kind of, like I said, monopolize the ransomware industry.
Yeah.
And it's trying to subsume a few different groups underneath it.
Yeah.
It's trying to make its ransomware as a service a little bit more easy to access.
Appealing for affiliates,
use, right?
script kiddies, all that.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's more is it seems, at least if this is true, that they're also willing to target other ransomware organizations that aren't going to be compliant with what they want.
Yeah, so they're turning among their own. They're cannibalizing,
which is going to be very interesting because what we have seen is we've seen an increase in ransomware activity because of a lack of payout.
Yeah. 40% decrease in ransomware payouts in 2024.
But if you have a company that's trying to subsume the entirety of the criminal enterprise,
right,
there's a potential that there may be increased value in that for them to where they don't have to be as successful as a smaller ransomware group in order to be able to keep it going.
Right.
And that's the true danger there is they may actually be able to monopolize that to a degree. I mean, I don't think they're ever going to fully succeed, but if they can get a large enough conglomerate underneath them, first of all, they'll have a lot more versatility as to how the attacks run and what attacks get run. And they will have a lot wider reach as far as their affiliate program goes. And so you're going to start seeing a lot more of Dragon Force in the news, I think.
It is odd. All that stuff is a criminal enterprise, but kind of run out in the open.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of know what's going on with them. You know,
well, we know a lot of that has to do with sanctuary countries.
Yeah.
That allow them to operate. It's that unspoken rule: just don't attack us, and you can operate out of here.
Russia.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say it.
Yep.
It's the Russians. Yeah, and I agree. The interesting part to me is Lockbit is the one that was supposedly taken out by international law enforcement several months ago. The FBI defaced their webpage and all of that stuff. And one of the main admins for Lockbit just came out and said, "Y'all didn't get anything," and just called their bluff. And they spun up to Lockbit 3.0, and then went out and started ransomwaring all kinds of organizations. I mean, all they did was get maybe a black eye, but it wasn't. It was more like that didn't hurt at all.
You know, another one that interests me a lot is, because we've dealt with so many events from them, is Ransom Hub.
Yeah.
But they went dark.
They did go dark.
And I'm really wondering if they got subsumed by
Dragon Force. I think they got subsumed by Dragon Force, yes. I think they did. The other thing about Dragon Force and Lockbit, because again, Lockbit is a heavyweight in that world, right?
For sure.
Dragon Force, if the accounts are true, and they did, that data got leaked from somewhere.
Yeah, it's definitely leaked. It's definitely out there. Someone did it.
Someone did it. But Dragon Force, I mean, that's a monster, because whatever you want to make of the ransomware world as it sits, I mean, some of the higher tier guys, they know what they're doing. I mean, these aren't idiots.
Right.
They know about OPSEC, and they can get around stuff, and they're very brilliant technology folks. They just happen to be criminals as well on that. So if Dragon Force is doing that to Lockbit, what kind of skill set do they have? And how, horrifying could that be?
Well, and that may go back to the fact that Ransom Hub went dark. And if they subsumed a lot of big players, there's a possibility that it's become more like a ransomware think tank, a kind of who's who of the big names. And if they're all playing on the same team all of a sudden, I mean, that knowledge set is going to go far, and it's going to be hard to defend against. I'm not going to lie.
We were doing research. You and I were doing research on that one group that was oddly different.
Arc something. Arcana. Yes.
That one actually, that was the first one in a long time that kind of shook me in my boots a little bit, because
been fairly quiet since, though.
Well, I haven't been to the dark web page, so I don't know what's out there. Right.
I just haven't seen anything big come across any of the threat feeds.
But those dudes reportedly, apparently, compromised an ISP. And reportedly or apparently got nodes on customers' routers.
Yeah.
Big ass botnet.
Yes.
Waiting to happen. Right? And if you look at you and I read through this, if you look at the way they went through that, if what they posted is true, that's the caveat that I'll post there.
Right.
Those dudes had mad skills. They had mad skills because they pwned that entire thing.
They didn't just compromise it in one facet. They compromised it like 3 different ways, and I mean, basically built up
back doors on the routers, on the client, on the customer routers.
Right.
Which is crazy. Imagine Astound or Grande having that kind of breach, and your home router could be hosting part of a botnet.
Right.
I just insane. But it's not really funny, because I wouldn't want to have it happen to me. But their proof of life, the proof that they did it, included the CEO's driver's license, pay stub, all of that stuff.
Now, the most interesting thing about them, and I think this may be another facet that we see start to come out of certain sectors of the ransomware world, is that they were presenting themselves as a security company.
Yeah.
That this was more or less a bug program.
Well, right.
That they proved that they could get in.
Right. Now
you
pay
either
me.
Pay us.
Right.
Or we're going to leak this for the good of the community.
Right.
And I thought that was a very, and they're not the first ones to have necessarily gone that route. But I think there's been at least a lessening of hacktivism in the world lately. And I think...
Well, I mean, since like 2015.
Right.
When somebody figured out that you could monetize hacktivism.
Right. And so I think we're going to start seeing more of maybe a PR campaign on that route, with a number of different ransomware actors trying to claim that they are the good of the world, just trying to help you out.
I was thinking, I was thinking this morning, coming to work. I was driving my car, and I was thinking about the good old days where hacktivism was a thing, and it was for the good of the public, right? Exposing government secrets, right, and stuff like that. People often refer to Snowden as like the king hacktivist, right? I don't know about that relationship with Russia,
right,
and all of that, but even going back to like Cult of the Dead Cow and with Mudge, and I was thinking about Mudge actually on that, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to pursue this, was like I was just fascinated with the hacktivism, like how much good could come from doing a hack for society.
To be clear, Scinary does not engage in any form of activism.
No, not at all.
Pure blue team.
Not yes, unless we're under contract.
Right.
And we only
rules
accept,
of engagement.
And we only accept contracts from entities within the United States. Absolutely. Mudge should not go to jail though. He's a good guy. He was a good guy. But I mean even that, like Micknick is like, again, rest his soul, but he's vaulted, he's held up in high esteem in the hacker community, even though what he did was highly illegal. And he should have been prosecuted. But again, hacktivism back in the day served a
greater purpose.
A greater purpose, right?
It wasn't just monetarily driven.
Right. But then somebody figured out, well, they may pay me if I have all this data. They may pay me if I don't release it.
Now,
right?
I'm sure some of them are operating under a Robin Hood guise. I'm sure there's a little bit of that.
No.
But I haven't seen very many ransomware groups actually feeding the poor.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed. We're the homeless shelters, right? The Ransom Hub funded homeless shelter.
If I find a Lockbit soup kitchen, I'll let you know.
Yeah. No, I absolutely get that. So yeah, I think that the Dragon Force thing, I think that is absolutely something to watch in the future. And I also think that, of course, the number one vector we see in ransomware attacks is compromised credentials, right?
So, and that's something I actually want to speak to. So we've been preparing for Red Team lately, and I'll be honest, we're not overly...
Inside the United States, under a contract with rules of engagement signed by the client.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest, we're not the most sophisticated attackers in the world. We can understand an attack, we can look at an attack and understand what it's trying to do. But as far as like designing these things,
we're not MIT level graduates,
right?
Yeah,
we do okay, but it's nothing crazy. I cannot describe to you how crazy it is to realize how powerful the local admin rights truly are.
Oh yeah.
All of the stuff the ransomware actors do, I want to say about 3/4 of it, based off of actual like attack chains and trying to recreate those and developing our own malware and everything else that we've done, 3/4 of them are immediately gone the second you deny local admin rights.
Yeah.
As long as they have local admin, I can establish a backdoor like no one's business. I can dump LSAS. I can have so much fun with you and your network.
Right.
If I have local admin rights on a user's machine.
But even before that, before you even land on an endpoint, the vector that we see is compromised credentials, usually through SSL VPN, right? And it doesn't matter if it's a Palo or a Forta or a SonicWall or a pfSense. It doesn't matter. If you've got SSL VPN open, and
without multi-factor authentication,
without MFA, and the most common misconfiguration is the LDAP sync is pointed to all users in AD, right? So
and you'll have MFA enforced on a few, or if you even have it enforced, if not set to bypass.
Or you've got your management interface facing the internet, and you've got MFA on everything else except that.
Right. Though I will say the last couple times we've seen the management interface exposed to the internet, it does appear like that was a result of an attacker using an exploit on that firewall. I won't mention what firewalls, but those exploits then led to them opening up the management interface externally so they could use a newly created user on the firewall in order to access the firewall, even if they
both
credentials.
You and I have worked incidents where the management interface was actually open to the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So instead of 443, it was 8443. That was the management interface, and you could get to that, right?
Oh yeah.
And then those compromised credentials that didn't have MFA, you're on there. All of a sudden, you're admin on the firewall. Okay, game on, right? Yep. At that point, I can let anyone in. So there are a ton of nerds on social media that will yell at us and call us names because we can bypass MFA. I get that.
Sure.
I get that. I understand that nothing is 100% secure.
Adversary in the middle has been an increasing attack vector, and it's a great phishing campaign. I love it.
Absolutely. But what we're talking about is your high percentage attacks, right?
Right.
Your most likely scenarios, as it were. Your most likely scenario is that compromised credentials allow the SSL VPN into the environment, and you don't have MFA on the SSL VPN. That's your most likely scenario. That's your most likely attack path from what we've seen. Secondarily, getting back to local admin rights, you get a user fish that installs Atera and Splashtop.
Yep.
On that endpoint, they've got local admin rights. Then you dump LSAS.
Remote access software is increasingly becoming the vector of attack for phishing campaigns.
Yes.
Malicious JavaScript, either as a link or as a being disguised as a PDF so that it will go off whenever they double click it. We're experimenting a little bit with all that kind of stuff as well in our own red team environment. It is amazing how well that stuff works for being able to establish that persistence.
Yeah.
That remote access software as a backdoor works out really, really well. Not only that, but more often than not, first of all, it uses 443 or sometimes port 80, but known HTTP and HTTPS.
Right.
So your AV, your network monitoring are not going to be looking for it as much because it
looks legitimate.
Right. And then beyond that, it allows file transfer capabilities across the board as well.
Right.
So it can become your exfil vector as well as your ability to be able to get back into the network. And then even after that, they still try to establish persistence on the network and get access through the SSL VPN. This is just that always on backdoor that they don't have to worry about because the likelihood of you finding it, if you're focused on the SSL VPN part and that's the vector of attack that they use to get in, you may not notice the Splashtop, the Atera, the AnyDesk. We've just seen so many different types of remote access software be used for these kind of attacks.
And as far as our SOC is concerned, we don't care.
No.
We don't care if it's TeamViewer, if
it has not been approved on the network, we're going to double check on that because it has become so prolific.
Yeah. And the thing about like Atera and some of those things are free to download and use, right?
Yep.
And I know with Atera, I think this is true. A lot of times with Atera, they're stolen licenses.
Yes, and that's the other thing that we see is as attackers get more victims for their attack, they're able to increase their arsenal of approved and authorized software, whether it be signed software by Microsoft that they can leverage, or it's signed licenses for remote access software.
They're using legit. I mean, it's law bins, right?
Yep. Exactly.
These are living off the land binaries that are legitimate use stuff, which makes it even more difficult to understand what may be going on in the environment. It wasn't like back in the old days. Again, and I'm only going back 10 years, where first of all, ransomware wasn't you were getting encrypted, but they were not exfiltrating data. They were just
the double
encrypting
exploitation, right?
Yeah, and then we had double exploitation. But even back then, it was easy to understand. Well, they just sent them a document with a VBA script in it that reached out to C2 and downloaded the malware or whatever, and they would encrypt you without exfilling any data out of it. I mean, everybody caught on to that pretty quick, except Microsoft, who took 5 years to address the VBA thing. But other
isn't
than
it just now going away?
But they replaced it with Python.
Right. Python scripting in your Excel. It's going to be great.
It's going to be fantastic. But yeah, the vectors are getting, again, these guys are not dumb guys. They're getting they're smart. And the thing about capitalism, and that's what ransomware is. It is raw, naked, in your face capitalism. The thing about that is, as we as an industry start to shut down the SSL VPNs, the Ateras, and all of that stuff, we start locking that stuff down, they're going to find another route. And we can't conceive of that route. We may have an idea, a general idea, but we can't conceive of that. And it's what I'm going way back now. But after the 9/11 attacks, the commission on 9/11 said it was the way that we failed, the way the intelligence community failed, was a lack of imagination.
Yep. Yeah, and to that degree, our industry has been so focused on, for a very long time in the past, exploits, and there's still a lot of information coming out about that. But in the end, about 80% of what we're seeing in the wild is social engineering.
Right.
It's the phishing attacks.
Yeah.
And that's becoming more and more sophisticated. That's actually a really good use of AI for the malicious actors, because they can now scrape the entire internet for all the different identifying things about you, about your company, and put it all into an email that's specifically designed for you based off of your email address.
So what I'm hearing you say is we're implementing AI wrong. AI needs to be the end user, not the cybersecurity professional.
Potentially. that may be one way of remedying this. But so what we're seeing is social engineering is becoming the mainstay. This is why email security has been getting increasingly more important.
Yeah.
This is actually why MFA is getting increasingly more important, because it is more likely that your user is going to give up their credentials without meaning to.
Yeah.
For these kinds of social engineering campaigns.
One of the things that I'm hopeful about, and this is something I've been noticing, and I actually saw it again yesterday. Back in December, a vendor called Power Schools had a huge breach. I mean, huge. It affected a lot of schools across the United States. And we've seen this tactic before. The I guess Power Schools or whatever, they refuse to pay. The insurance company refused to pay. Whatever. Anyway, the threat actors are becoming more desperate in that, and they're starting to call the people directly at home or on their cell phones or send them emails. They're starting to reach out more and more directly. And we actually worked a case like this. where the threat actor was like, the organization is not playing ball. We're going to go to news agencies. We're going to come after your constituents. And then they would call the individual people and say, hey, we're a threat actor and we've got all of your information. If you don't pay us or if you don't get this organization, we're gonna blast this all over the world. We're gonna put it on your Facebook page or whatever.
Which I think makes it more and more important for companies to get their PR in order earlier.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, not copying to the fact that you had a ransomware event is going to be detrimental to you now.
Well, so I do want to give this caveat to Power Schools. They're actually earlier than, say, I don't know, Oracle, who really hasn't said anything about their thing.
Yeah.
Right? But at least Power Schools came out and said, look, we've had a thing. Right.
And because of that, they've been able to control the narrative a lot more.
Well, they've been able to control the narrative. Now, they come out and said, we had a thing. We don't think it's that bad. Right?
Yeah.
But we did have a thing. Here's some things that you can look for. And they actually gave their customers, hey, go and look for these types of logs. This is how you would know if you're effective. So I do want to give that up to them on that. Now, a lot of that you got to, it's terrible, but it is the way of business, is that you've got other interests to serve.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Especially if you're an organization like Power Server. There's no telling how much venture capital and all of that stuff is in there, which is, by the way, one of the things that Scinary we are very happy about. We don't have anybody in our pocket.
It's all just Richard and Donald, and they tell us what to do each day.
Yeah, the legal things anyway. But so I do want to shout out to Power School about that. They were early and at least a little upfront about that. Oracle hasn't been so far as we know on stuff. But the PR side of it is, yes, get out in front of it. In fact, you saw the email that I wrote to one of our folks in New York. It was like, there's really not a whole lot you can do about this, right? But reassure people that, hey, we are going to be holding these people accountable, and we're with you. We hear you. We understand.
And another
sucks.
Yeah, and another aspect of this that actually goes in Power School's favor is they were very adamant about telling what clients were affected. And because of that, this particular client we're talking about knew they weren't affected by this breach.
Right.
And what that means is, even though
they were reaching out because they got a letter saying, hey, if you were, let us know. And it's like, we're not affected. But this could be a thing because we use another platform, and it could be, who's to say they won't get breached, right?
But by getting ahead of it, Power Schools was able to make it to where, because a thing I would be a little bit concerned of as a company who maybe went through a ransomware event recently, is if a customer who wasn't affected by the breach ends up paying out because they think they were affected by the breach. I mean, that opens up a whole new world of litigation, of issues, of PR loss. I mean, like, there's a lot of things there. So by getting ahead of it, they were able to stop that potential, especially because ransomware groups are starting to go more to the actual clientele and end user level.
Yeah.
If they're willing to do that, then you have to get ahead of them before they start extorting people that may not even be affected.
The bad part about any situation like that, if you're the victim of a ransomware attack or a data breach or something like that, it's bad. But it's done. All you can say is, hey, this happened. We feel you. We understand. We're going to be working with you on this. But at the same time, this is the world we live in now, right? Look, what was it, a year and a half ago? MGM Grand in Vegas got breached.
Yeah.
Right? They got ransomware. Like the slot machines were shut down and shit. So, and you're talking about companies who got billions to invest in cybersecurity, and I think they got them through their Spiceworks deployment or some help desk thing.
And what's more is they were basically, from what I remember from that story, they were basically teenagers who did social engineering on them in order to be able to get it.
Yeah.
It does not matter how big of a company you are, how robust your security platform is. they will find a way in at some point in time.
If you're targeted, yeah.
The biggest thing is to limit impact as much as possible, and that includes your PR solution.
Well, but don't make it easy, right?
Right.
We talk here at Scinary about defensive lines, right? We want to set up successive defensive lines.
Defense in depth.
Yeah, so that if they get past the first one, they have to hit a second one. They have to hit a third one. They have to hit a fourth one, right? We're not saying that they can't get past all that.
Right.
What we're saying is, what we're trying to do is attrit them to where they give up. Now, if you're targeted, that's a different thing. Mm-hmm. Like, if they're dead set on coming in and getting your stuff, there's not a whole lot that anybody can do about that. I mean, federal government's been hacked so many times.
I will say what we oftentimes see, though, is that there's not as much, at least managed detective controls. They may have a lot of detective controls in that suite, but people don't look at the logs. Or, and so I do feel like
that one organization that, we got those alerts. We got those alerts, and it was a third-party provider that was providing the alerts. We got them. But we really didn't think anything about it.
Right.
Because you did not have anybody that was solely responsible for that, right? You got them at 1 o'clock in the morning. There's nobody on your IT team up at 1 o'clock in the morning unless you have a cybersecurity arm, right? On that stuff, which is where managed detection and response comes in. On that kind of stuff. I don't know about you, but this is good beer.
Yeah, I'm thinking about going to my next one, but I really am afraid about the slurring of the speech at the beginning.
Well, so I think because we've got a choice. We can cut this podcast off now, or it's going to be a 4-hour podcast.
How long is it so far?
I think it's about 45 minutes.
What time is it? Oh, 2:20.
No, I think we need to cut it off now.
Yeah, we probably do.
I think we need to cut it off now.
Because I think we're sitting at about an hour.
So on the next episode of Scinary Information Nexus, the podcast of sin.
That's right.
We'll talk about I don't know what we'll talk. We'll talk about something. I don't know. Who cares? Nobody's listening.
They may be listening. Hey, in Brazil, buenos dias.
Yes.
Y'all have a wonderful day, and thank you for listening for the Scinary Information Nexus, or your podcast of sin.
Thank you.
We will see you all next time.